There are ancient projects in the world that even today are still not fully understood. Structures built by people in the past that seem impossible when we think about the tools they only had. In this video, we will look at the top 10 most mysterious ancient projects. Works of ancient people that show how advanced they were even back then. But before we continue, please like this video. This means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much. Let's start with number 10, the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks in Ohio. This is not just a single monument. These are 8 large earthworks. They're not just mounds, but carefully planned shapes like circles, squares, and octagons. They were made about 2,000 to 600 years ago. According to UNESCO, these are large earth structures found around the Ohio River. This includes places like Mount City Group, Hopewell Earthworks, High Bank Works, Hopeton Earthworks, Fort Ancient, Great Circle Earthworks, and Octagon Earthworks in Newark. The question is, how did they do this? The people who built these didn't live in large cities. They also didn't have a clear single leader. According to the National Park Service, they were just simple communities. They relied on farming and gathering food. But even so, they were able to create shapes that were extremely precise. And not only that, these also align with the movements of the sun and the moon. This means they weren't just piling up soil, they also understood astronomy. And they incorporated that into their designs. If you look at it now, it seems simple, because they only use soil, right? But making this was extremely difficult. They had to choose the right location, measure the exact shape, move a huge amount of soil, and make sure the measurements were correct. Even from above, the design remains clear. For example, in Mount City, the layout is compact and organized. In Newark, the design is more expansive and covers the entire landscape. In Fort Ancient, they even used the edge of the mountain to create a large enclosure. This wasn't for defense. They were used for ceremonies, places designed to be entered and experienced. Even now, there are still questions. How did they organize such a large project? What do the shapes and arrangements mean? And even the name Hopewell, that's not what they really call themselves. That's just a name given by archaeologists. They're large, have organized patterns, and are clearly planned. But the entire system of the people who built them is still not fully understood. Now let's go to number 9, Nurraxi di Barumini in Sardinia, a place that, even though it's now in ruins, you can still feel how big it once was. This is the most well-known example of a nuraghe. These are stone towers unique to Sardinia, dating back to the Bronze Age. According to UNESCO, the Nurraxi di Barumini is the most complete and most important example of this kind of ancient architecture. It started with a large central tower, built in the late 2nd millennium BCE. Its height back then reached about 18.5 meters, and inside there are 3 rooms connected by a spiral staircase. But it didn't end there. Eventually it was surrounded by 4 more towers, connected by thick walls, and around it, an entire village was formed. This means it's not just a simple tower or a simple fort. It's a layered complex that gradually grew and changed over a long period of time. As a megaproject, it's really impressive. They used a huge amount of stones, and it was built using the dry stone technique. This means there was no cement or mortar. And it wasn't built just once. It was expanded repeatedly over many generations. According to UNESCO, this place has been inhabited from the Bronze Age up to the 3rd century over time. The defenses grew larger, and more houses were built around it. So it's clear this wasn't just a project with a single purpose. It was a living center that was continuously used and upgraded. There's still a big question. What was this really for? Yes, it has defensive features, so you could say it's a fort, but that's not a sufficient explanation. Because of its location, its design, and the size of the community around it, it's possible that its role was even bigger. Some researchers even say that one large circular building could have been a meeting place or a council chamber. That means it could have had another role as well. Governance or management of the community. This is one of the most important pieces of evidence of the Nurragic civilization. But even so, it still can't be classified as something simple. It's not just a watchtower. It's also not an isolated structure. And the most interesting part is you can see in the construction itself that this is a project built over many generations. It wasn't built all at once. That's why it's mysterious. It's not because scientists don't know anything. It's because up to now it's still not clear what its real role in society is. Now let's go to number 8, the Chaco Culture National Historical Park in New Mexico. This isn't just a single monument. It's an entire system, a network of interconnected sites. According to UNESCO, this is a large pre-Columbian cultural complex that dominated the American Southwest from the 9th century to the 13th century. At the center of this system are what are called the Great Houses, large stone buildings like Pueblo Bonito and Chetro Kettle located in Chaco Canyon. And according to the National Park Service, just Pueblo Bonito alone, it took several decades to complete. Pueblo Bonito stands 4 to 5 stories tall and has more than 600 rooms. This is not an ordinary house. It's large, well-planned, and part of a bigger system with roads, shrines, and other communities around it. According to the National Park Service, the roads were well constructed. They were straight and carefully planned. Inside the canyon, the roads were usually about 15 feet wide. Some were even wider. When there was a mountain or a cliff, they didn't go around it. They still went straight. They built stairs on the rocks or ramps just to keep the road straight. By around the year 1050, the Chaco culture had become the center of a large network. Many great houses in the canyon are connected to more than 150 other structures in a wider area. This is where everything becomes mysterious. Not all of the roads are continuous. There are sections that seem to be cut off. That's why archaeologists still can't agree. Some say this is an entire road system for long-distance travel, but others believe it's not just for traveling. It might also have a symbolic or ritual purpose. In addition, some of the roads are too wide just for travel, especially since they didn't have vehicles back then. But one thing is clear. A tremendous amount of effort was put into this. They had to bring wood from distant mountains, build large structures, and make roads in difficult areas. Roads that are still straight even today. Between 1100 and 1200, construction slowed down, and the use of the place changed. It wasn't just a city, it was an entire area that was planned and well built. And until now, there still isn't a single clear explanation. Now let's go to number 7, the Cahokia Mounds in Illinois. This is one of the largest and most ambitious projects in pre-Columbian North America. It's near Collinsville. It's also close to St. Louis, at its peak, around 1,050 to 1,150. Its population may have reached 10,000 to 20,000, according to UNESCO. Back then, it reached almost 1,600. There are about 120 mounds now. Only 51 remain in the protected area. At the very center is Monk's Mound. This is the largest man-made earthwork in North and South America, according to UNESCO and the National Park Service. It was built in 14 stages, and it covers about 10 acres. This means it was not built all at once. It was enlarged repeatedly over a long period of time, and if you think about the amount of earth that had to be moved, the effort the people put into this was incredible. At Cahokia Mounds, all the soil was dug by hand, carried, shaped, and repeatedly arranged. No machines, just simple tools. But they managed to build an entire planned city, not just simple mounds of earth. It had a system. There were public spaces, residential areas, and different zones for specific activities. They also had what they called a wood hinge, a circle made of wood. It was used to track the movement of the sun, like an ancient observatory. There was also a wall or palisade surrounding part of the city. This means they were constructing at different levels at the same time. Some mounds were for public buildings, while others were for the leaders. And there were also some used as burial sites or as markers for the layout of the city. But the real mystery isn't whether this was a large city, because that's already clear. The question is, how was it managed? How did they organize such a large system, and why did it suddenly grow, then collapse as well? According to the University of California, Berkeley, possible reasons include flooding, drought, lack of resources, and other environmental problems. But the answer is still incomplete. In other words, we know how it grew, but we're still not sure why it disappeared. One thing is clear. This was not just a simple settlement. It was a large center with well-constructed buildings, knowledge of the stars, and an organized way of life that could be compared to other cities in the world at that time. There are still many questions that remain unanswered. Now let's go to number 6, Tiwanaku, and the Acapana Pyramid in Bolivia. It is located in a high area near Lake Titicaca. Here, Tiwanaku began as a small settlement, but it grew and became a planned city around 400 to 900. 80 many parts of the city were made of adobe, so they disappeared over time. But the ceremonial core still remains made of stone. According to UNESCO, its core is the center of the community and faith, well organized and facing the 4 directions. Inside it, the largest and most remarkable is the Acapana Pyramid. It is a structure with 7 stacked layers, and it reached over 18 meters in height. Even though it's now damaged, you can still see how much planning and effort was put into it. But this is not just a pyramid, it's part of a larger complex with other structures like Kalasasaya, Pumapunku, and other temples and palaces. This means it's not just a religious site, it was a center of politics and society. And that's not all. The people here also developed an advanced agriculture system. They used irrigation to adapt to the difficult conditions. That's why Tiwanaku is not just an ordinary city. It is a well-organized system that combines labor, faith, and daily life in a place that is difficult to live in. The Acapana Pyramid is not just an ordinary pyramid. It is surrounded by well-designed drainage canals. This means that water control was already planned from the very beginning of construction. It wasn't just added later on. Here, you can see that they considered both the building and the environment at the same time. But this is where everything becomes even more mysterious. Because according to recent studies, what we see now might actually be much smaller compared to the real size of the place back then. A report from UNESCO Courier that used drone mapping showed that the previous estimate was wrong. It turns out that the area covered by Tiwanaku is actually bigger than what was previously thought. It was found that the explored area reaches more than 600 acres, and the total heritage area is even bigger than that. This means that what most tourists see today is just a small part of what used to be the entire city. It was also found that Pumapunku has other structures still buried underground, so as more of the place is discovered, the mystery only grows deeper. Because if this much has already been added just from the modern survey, it means we still don't know everything. What's even more surprising is that it's not just a simple pyramid ruin. This is just a small part of a much larger history that we are only slowly uncovering. Archaeologists already know the basics, that this was a large ceremonial and political center with advanced stonework, a drainage system, and wide influence. But even so, a lot is still missing. That's because many parts of the city were made of adobe, which easily deteriorates and disappears over time. So what remains now is just like the tip of the iceberg. It's large, planned, and technically advanced, but what we see is still incomplete. Now let's go to number 5, Caral Supe in Peru. At first glance, it doesn't look mysterious. There are no huge ruins or broken walls. It just looks simple, clean, orderly, and quiet. But that's exactly what makes it interesting. According to UNESCO, this place is about 5,000 years old. It is located in a dry area near the Supe River Valley, and it covers more than 700 acres. It's not alone. It's one of 18 cities, part of a larger system, and Caral is its main center. Here you can see large mounds of earth, circular pits in the ground, and large pyramid-like structures. So it's clear, this didn't just grow randomly. From the very beginning, it was planned. A large city built for ceremonies with organized systems and for many people to live in. And just think, this was made even before the more famous Stone Empire. In the Andes, they had to organize their thousands of people and find materials and maintain the orderliness of the city in such a vast area. And even now, there's still a question. How did they manage to do this so precisely? Caral Supe is not just a pyramid with a nearby village. It's an entire ceremonial city with many large structures and public spaces. According to UNESCO, Quipu was also found in the area. This means their society was orderly and organized. But even with this kind of evidence, it's still not clear exactly how their system worked. What we can say is that this was not just a simple small community. This required a more advanced organization. And this is where the mystery comes in. How was such a large city able to be built so well so early in history? And how did it work without the things we expect from other ancient civilizations? For example, there are no large sculptures. There is no clear writing that explains their system. All you can see are the layout, the design, the size of the structures. It's like the city is telling its own story, but there's no direct explanation. Even the Quipu isn't enough to explain everything. Yes, it shows that the system is organized, but it doesn't tell the whole story. That's why Caral's like a silent city. It's clearly important, clearly planned, but there aren't enough details for us to fully understand it. Another reason why its condition is still good is because it was abandoned early and discovered late. Because of that, the structures were preserved. But in exchange, there is no continuous history to explain things to the next generation. So now, everything we know comes only from archaeology. In other words, it's a huge ancient city whose overall form is clear. But the whole story is still not clear. It's the beginning of a civilization that we still don't fully understand. Now let's go to number 4, Monte in Italy. This is one of the most unique monuments in Europe because it doesn't look like a typical ancient site. It's not a stone circle. It's not a tomb. It's also not a cave used for ceremonies. It looks like a huge altar with a long ramp leading to the top. According to Italy's official heritage description, in this ancient site used during the 4th to 3rd millennium BCE, its main feature is a layered altar that is accessed by climbing a long path upward. And the most interesting part is that it's unique. There's no other place exactly like it. Monte isn't just a flat area in the middle of a field. It's located in a place where the ceremony, the burial site, and the surroundings are all interconnected. According to studies, this is a unique type of structure in the entire Mediterranean during the 4th millennium BCE. In its earliest phase, it had a core that resembled a truncated pyramid. Over time, it was covered by a larger structure with the same design. This means it wasn't built just once. It was a project that was repeatedly modified and expanded over many generations. You can also see traces of older temples at the site, sacrificial stones, tombs, and there are also parts of ancient dwellings. So it's clear this isn't a simple structure. It's a center of activity for the whole community. But the problem is, even though we know what it looks like, the reason why it was built is still unclear. There are researchers who compare it. It looks similar to other layered structures in the world, but that doesn't mean they're connected. There's still debate about where the idea for this kind of design came from, and even the official explanation doesn't give a single answer. It's mostly seen as a place where daily life and ceremonies come together. Signs on the stones, in the surroundings, and in the arrangement of the place, but there's no clear explanation. There's nothing written, no direct story. So even though the structure is clearly visible, its true meaning is still hidden. And that's the reason why it's not easily forgotten. It's big, it was built early and has a unique design. There's a long path going up. There's an older structure underneath, and around it, there are traces of settlement, ceremony, and a larger sacred place. It seems clear what stands here, but it's still not clear why it was made this way. And that's the real mystery. Now let's go to number 3, the heart of Neolithic Orkney in Scotland. It is located on the mainland of Orkney, in the northern part of the country. It is one of the most impressive ancient sites in the world. According to UNESCO, it is made up of 4 main sites: Maeshowe, Standing Stones of Stenness, Ring of Brodgar, and Skara Brae. These are all together in a small area, but they form a complete ceremonial and residential site, and their age is about 5,000 years. This is not just a single monument. It's an entire system built over many centuries. There are tombs, dwellings, standing stones, and wide open spaces. Everything was planned together. It's like an entire place where people lived, and even now it's still being studied. According to UNESCO, the heart of Neolithic Orkney is a vast cultural landscape. It clearly shows how people lived 5,000 years ago. You'll understand it better when you look at each part and how they were connected to each other. For example, the Skara Brae, it's one of the best preserved ancient dwellings. In Northern Europe, there are houses made of stone. There are interconnected passageways, and there are built-in furnishings inside. It's like a complete community that's been preserved. Next, the Maeshowe. This is a tomb with an extremely precise design. During the longest night of the year, the sun rises, and the light shines directly into the chamber. This means it was planned based on the movement of the sun. It has something to do with the sky. There's also the standing stones of Stennis. This is an early example of a henge monument. And the Ring of Brodgar, a massive stone circle with a diameter of about 130 meters. And it's also surrounded by a dugout ditch. If you put it all together, you'll see that this wasn't just a single project. Different kinds of effort were needed here. Skara Brae for living, Maeshowe for burial and alignment, Stennis and Brodgar for ceremonies and the site's planned layout. All of this shows that people back then knew how to organize many people, and they had a clear plan. It wasn't just about construction, it also had meaning. And remember, this is in the northern part of Britain. It's far from the well-known centers of the ancient world. But here, they were able to create a large place for ceremonies. Even before other European empires became famous, everything here was already becoming mysterious. How do these structures work together? Why did they build them here? How did they combine everything into one system? Many things have already been discovered, but not everything is clear yet. But they didn't leave any writings that would explain everything. That's why the story is still being pieced together little by little. In addition, according to Historic Environment Scotland, there is an even wider area being studied around it. This includes the Ness of Brodgar, which is located between the Ring of Brodgar and the Standing Stones of Stennis. This shows that these are not just separate monuments. Everything is interconnected. And even in their construction, a great deal of effort was already required. This means they spent a lot of time and energy on things that were not just practical, but had a deeper meaning. And that's the most interesting part. An entire society invested tremendous effort into a system that, even today, we still don't fully understand. A place that appears almost complete, but the explanation is lacking. The monuments are still there. The arrangement of the place is still there. You can clearly see the excellence of the craftsmanship. But the way of thinking of the people who made this, we still don't fully understand. It's like there's a missing piece in the story. Now let's go to number 2, Poverty Point in Louisiana. This is one of the most amazing ancient projects made by people who are often underestimated. The place covers more than 400 acres, and it's on high ground near the Mississippi floodplain. According to the National Park Service, it was used for about 1,700 years until 1,100 BCE. And what's most unique is that it wasn't built by a single great leader or government. They also didn't have modern tools. They were just a community of hunters, fishermen, and gatherers. But even so, they were able to accomplish a massive project. In the center of the area, you can see 5 mounds, 6 consecutive curved sections of land, and a large central plaza. It's estimated at about 53 million cubic meters. Were moved to build this. This means it wasn't a small project. This is one of the largest earthworks. There are curves with equal spacing. And the mounds are not all the same. They differ in size and purpose. This means the entire layout was planned. It wasn't just a place used occasionally. There were people living here, working, and repeatedly returning to the same place for many generations. Even though they only used earth, it was so huge that a proper plan was needed. And this was part of a large network that stretched for hundreds of miles, according to the National Park Service. This means that this was not just an isolated place. It was a center where people, products, and ideas converged. But even with this kind of network, it still doesn't answer the most important question. Why was it designed this way? And how did they organize such a massive project? According to the National Park Service, we know what it looked like and how it was built, but it's still unclear why. Researchers can study the excavated items, traces of food, and items that came from trade. They can estimate how much effort was put in. But even so, there's still one thing that's unclear. Why this design? Why are the curves shaped like this? Why is the arrangement like this? And why was it made right here? There's still no exact answer. And that's the reason why Poverty Point is mysterious. The physical evidence is clear, but the real reason behind it still seems hidden. In addition, according to the National Park Service, less than 1% of the entire site has been disturbed or excavated. This means that most of the remaining evidence is still intact and there is still much more to discover. We know that this was a place where people lived, a place for ceremonies, and part of a large trade network. We also know that it shows an enormous amount of effort was needed to build it. But the most important question is, what does its entire layout mean? It's still unclear. There are no large statues. There are no written explanations. There is no stone temple that's easy to interpret. Instead, what was left behind is a vast design on the ground. And that's where we see how advanced the ancient people in North America were. A project that is both clear and mysterious. Now let's go to number 1, Baalbek in Lebanon. This is one of the most impressive ancient construction sites in the world. It combines Roman architecture and the massive use of stone. According to UNESCO, Baalbek is a massive sanctuary that was built over more than 200 years at the foot of the anti-Lebanon mountains in the Bekaa Valley. During its time, it was one of the most important religious sites in the Roman world. Here you can find the Temple of Jupiter, the Temple of Bacchus, the Temple of Venus, and the Temple of Mercury. But the most famous is what's called the Trilithon, 3 massive stones that are part of the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter. And they're not just big. It's one of the largest stones used in construction in the entire ancient world. The temple itself. It's surrounded by columns that reach up to 20 meters high. But what's even more astonishing is the size of the stones underneath. They even discovered one in the quarry that's even bigger, estimated to weigh almost 1,600 tons. Just imagine that. A single stone, that heavy. And up to now, people are still talking about how they managed to do it. But the real mystery of Baalbek isn't about who built it, but how they managed to move, lift, and assemble such massive stones with such precision. UNESCO clearly states that Baalbek reached its peak during the time of the Romans. And according to studies mentioned by the New Yorker, the Temple of Jupiter was actually built by the Romans at different times, starting in the late 1st century BCE. This means we know who built it. We know when it was built. But this is where the real question begins. Because even archaeologists are still puzzled by one thing. The stones aren't just big, they're almost too big for what's needed. It's like they're not practical. So the question is, why did they make it this big? It wasn't necessary, but they still did it. And not only that, there's another big problem. How did they move the stones? The quarry where they got these from is close to the site, and the area is a bit higher. That means it's possibly easier to slide it down. But even so, moving a stone that weighs hundreds of tons, and sometimes more than 1,000, requires a very well thought out plan. According to the Smithsonian Institution, there were even some stones that were just left in the quarry because they were too big and couldn't be moved anymore. That means even they themselves had limitations. So the mystery of Baalbek isn't about who did it, or if it's real. We already know the answer to that. What's still unclear is the exact process, and most of all, the reason why they chose to make it so massive. In addition, this isn't just a simple Roman construction. According to UNESCO, it was built on top of much older structures. This means the place has an even older history. Roman architecture, local tradition, and the ancient religion of the region were all blended here. People here worshipped what is called the Romanized form of the Heliopolitan Triad. But even before the Romans arrived, this place was already sacred. That's why Baalbek is not just a construction project. It's a place where ancient beliefs, local culture, and the ambitions of the Roman Empire came together. And even though the evidence is complete, everything is there. But why is it this big? That's where Baalbek becomes a mystery.